Welcome to the Garden of Art, this special garden where everything, all kinds of art, all sorts and forms and shapes and techniques and the concepts are thriving and blooming, and we all are going to enjoy ourselves in this garden. That's why I want us to come into the Garden of Art and experience and enjoy our encounter with Her Majesty beauty. Beauty and art, art and beauty, it is everywhere. Everywhere around us, and if we as happy travelers embarking into the journey into the environments of beauty are going to really achieve the high experiences of that visual happiness, we will open our eyes and open our hearts and look what we have. Look at this beautiful fabric. It is created in Russia. The pattern is created in Russia for fabric production in 19th century. Look at this beautiful card. It is made with the depiction of flowers and birds, and look how beautiful it is connected all together. Now, look at the girl. The girl painted sometime in 15th or 16th century, and it is called Girl with Cherry. I think they tell the story about a connection of all beautiful things in the world. Let's see what we have on this screen. The beautiful piece of lace with flowers and berries. And the flowers and berries are traveling from the lace onto that flask. Moonshine, it is called, I think. It also belongs to old times. And then very naturally, that's why we put it together this way, very naturally our eyes travel to the Renoir painting of Nini in the garden. Aren't they present the whole world that we can easily recognize when we just look around? And another piece of beauty, the car. The car is one of the famous and very, very fancy exotic cars, Lamborghini. And the color is beautiful, my favorite blue color. And it is put in the exterior of the street, which fits the image of that very contemporarily shaped car. And look how these old style buildings related to that contemporary stylish car. That's what I'm saying. Everything is blooming, and I have to add connect in the Garden of Art, where we encounter Her Majesty beauty wherever we look. The piece on the other side of the slide is actual painting created by contemporary artist Sterling Mulberry, whose beautiful art I'm going to present to your attention at one of our art salons. Her paintings look simple, but it is a very special way, multi-layered way of creating it. And you may pay attention at the connection, the relation between my shawl which is given me to my 25th birthday, which was long ago, but as I just said, real beauty never ages. And the images that contemporary artist Sterling Mulberry chooses to use in her painting. Now, another Renoir, another beautiful woman, and by the way, look, she has a flower in her hair. Remember how many flowers we have already seen that were used in those many kinds and sorts and forms of art pieces and art by art makers that we have already experienced. And silver vessel of 19th century Byzantine with animals and scenes and the old very well-known special shade of pink silver that in old times was always considered as the sign of real silver. I couldn't resist to include another painting, not painting, it's rather print of Japanese artist, not only because it is beautiful and the woman is presented here is quite beautiful, but the title of this piece that the lady is sitting under the cherry tree. Remember, like a few minutes ago, almost few minutes, like 4 maybe, we already have seen the girl with the cherries created by a European artist, and now we have someone from the other continent paying attention at the same connection between beautiful girl and beautiful tree and cherries. Guess what we have? We have another beautiful car from the sort of not only exotic cars, but very well named cars, because it is Maserati, believe it or not. Maserati, I think, created in 2014. It is not today, but it is a yesterday car, and seemingly very organically included into the yards, into the fences, into the scene of relatively old mansion. Again, connection. Art makes bridges. It is what we have to notice and pay our attention at it. On the other side of the screen is another beauty. One of the portrait, Cecilia, created by, guess, Leonardo da Vinci. When I've chosen to put these two pieces together, Maserati car and Cecilia by Leonardo, or with the little animal that she holds in her hands, I saw some formal, forgive me for that term, but in art it is quite benign, a legitimate term, formal relationship between the Maserati car created in 2014 and the beauties and the shapes of Cecilia painted by Leonardo in his time. And before I invite you to continue our journey further into the worlds of cultures and paintings, I want you to pay attention at that little portrait on the left side of your screen. This is one of the famous Fayum's portraits, encaustic portraits of the people of Hellenistic times. And the humankind didn't know about it until maybe a couple of 100 years ago, when some farmer by happy accident, by happy mistake, I would say. It was not an accident. Happy occurrence. While digging in the ground near his farm, found a whole bunch of old wooden plates, dirty then. And he was good enough to pay attention that under the layer of dirt was hidden many human faces. Thus, when the finds were researched and authenticized, it was discovered that we can add to the collection of our art treasure the very special portraits created in old times, many millennia ago, honoring the people lived in those times. I want to invite you to make a quick visit to Moscow and St. Petersburg. Let's fly to Moscow. Let's spread our big wings and fly there. When you're in Moscow, you cannot avoid visiting one of the Kremlin's big old cathedrals, which is called Arkangelsky Cathedral. You're entering in there, as you can see, and you find yourself immersed in the richness, in the bloom of color. Every single inch of these walls are covered with blooming, beautiful paradise of color. And what it depicts, that painting, that huge fresco, that is actually the whole interior. Grand princes of old Russia. They are presented here, and one more slide I want to show you. This is another painting. And you feel like your sense of visual happiness is nourished by this, and your heart is warmed, and your spirit is flying high. Now let's step from Moscow to the other place where we will meet. We will see one of the best museums in the world, one of the 5 best museums in the world, Hermitage, which means that we are traveling to St. Petersburg. But not only you're going to enjoy the beauty of its architecture by Rastrelli, the architect, but also you're going to have a very special treat. You are going to see how art can present another art, because the images that I'm going to show you are watercolors created by artists of 19th century, presenting the exterior in this case and interior of Hermitage. You see how it looks from the outside, how it looked from the outside in 19th century. Now let's step in. This is one of the interiors with portraits and priceless floors and the columns and everything. And then you see the room filled with paintings. I think it is Flemish art there. And as you can see, it's not only art on the wall, but also people, viewers. Aren't they look like us? Look carefully. You definitely can find yourself in the crowd of those people. And then, let's go further. Another room filled with paintings, and you see how beautiful it is and how beneficial for you to be there. And you want to go further and further, and you find yourself in the room filled with beautiful furniture. It's called drawing room by the Tsarina, for the Tsarina, which means that these cabinets can contain drawings, and she may sit at the table and do something. But most importantly, you see that the beauty, the art and beauty is around you. And don't forget that it comes to you through the art of other artists. So it is double benefit. You enjoy the art presented by other art. Isn't it cool? All right. While in Hermitage, you can see Leonardo and Raphael there. And you will see the piece by El Greco, Peter and Paul, in the Spanish room. I have to tell you that sometimes when I was a young girl growing up in St. Petersburg, I would come to Hermitage just for that one piece, Peter and Paul, and I would spend an hour standing and looking at it and thinking, I don't know what, but I just want you to enjoy the power of that art. Then look at next piece. This is the piece of Rembrandt, of young Rembrandt. It's called Flora, also from Hermitage collection. We are still there. So it's called Flora and presents his young wife Saskia in their first young happy years. And then look at another piece. This is also Rembrandt's piece called Danaya. I have to tell that a collection of Rembrandt's paintings housed in Hermitage is considered as one of the richest collection in compare with the Rembrandt Museum in Amsterdam. About this particular piece, there is one criminal story I want to tell you. And the criminal story is this. I was still there. I still was in Russia. Once upon a time, as people say, one crazy person came to the Rembrandt room, pulled out from his pocket a flask with very strong acid, and threw it onto the painting. And those who saw it watched how the whole beauty of Danaya just was running down the canvas, disappearing. So it took a couple of years, or maybe 3 years, or maybe even more, to restore the painting. But it's there. Rembrandt is there. And because we are still in Hermitage, we can run to the third floor, to the so-called art of our time. See, Matisse is there with his dance, and Kandinsky is here with his Blue Rider. And about Matisse, I think that we have to spend a little bit of time for another story. It's not a criminal story, but it is very interesting art historian story. When Matisse was a young artist in Paris and was yet to put himself in a good standing, one Russian merchant named Shukin came to the city and was advised to check on that young artist Matisse. So appointment was made. Shukin came to Matisse's studio, and Matisse, knowing about it, rearranged his paintings the way that the best ones were not that easily seen. But Merchant was not that simple. It was not that easy to deceive him. He found the best paintings by Matisse. They became friends, and he bought them, of course. He became friends, and eventually he commissioned 2 very famous paintings for his house, and now they are in Hermitage. One is dance, that we're happy to show you. Another is music, that I promise we will show you next day. Kandinsky is Kandinsky, as you can see, and another painting by the French artist Van Dongen. And because we are moving into so-called our time, let's spread our wings again, and let's fly to the other part of Europe, to France, to the Mediterranean home of Marc Chagall art. The museum, I do not speak French, so I will try to pronounce it the best way I can. So it is Musée National Marc Chagall. It was opened in 1973, and it was said that it was the very first in the history of art museum for art of this still living and actively working artist, Marc Chagall. So Marc Chagall, being actively working artist at that moment, created these beautiful stained glass windows for the concert hall of the museum. They are telling the story about creation of the world. And on the side of that slide, you will see the part of these stained glass windows, so you can see it in more details. And also, he created another depiction, see, in a bigger, like little zoom, so you can enjoy the parts of that stained glass, how sophisticated the composition and how just beautiful in color and shape it is. And Chagall has created that mosaic on the wall near the pond, on the territory, on the yard, on the courtyard of the museum. And though the next piece that I'm going to show you does not belong to the collection of that particular museum, Musée National Marc Chagall, but it is very beautiful, and I want to share it with you. And one more interesting thing about this painting, just putting aside the obvious fact that it is as beautiful as all many Chagall's paintings are, it depicts two places dear to Chagall. Paris, you see Notre Dame de Paris, and the place is not existing anymore in the shape and look as Chagall presented it here, unfortunately. So the double value of that piece is that it is not only Marc Chagall piece, of course, but also this is depiction of the masterpiece of the architecture and the culture of humankind, which will be restored, but not yet restored. And another interesting depiction that you can see here, on the left side, there is the depiction of Vitebsk, the city where Chagall was born and never forgot. In many pictures, in very many pictures, you can find this or that, this way or another, the depiction of his old times. He just puts all the time of his life together and all sides of his life together. The animal, the goat, with the human face, by the way, is considered as the symbol of domesticity. And these are lovers, as always, and this is artist and flowers and this green, whatever it is, moon or sun. Everything can be in Chagall's paintings, and I will never be surprised to see any unexpected thing, because it is very beautiful. Now, just let's try to make another encounter, another travel into the environments of beauty. to completely different time, to completely different space, but not less interesting and beautiful. We are going to travel 3.5 millennia back in time, believe it or not. We are traveling to the roots of our Western culture, to Hellenistic culture. And we are flying to Crete. We are going to come and see the palace of Knossos. You see here in the very middle picture, you see the ruins of that palace, which are beautiful as they are. And you will see on the other slide the view of kind of to be restored palace. And another slide I'm going to show you, which also belongs to the palace, to the Knossos palace, is one of my very favorite pieces of art. It's called Blue Ladies, that is the official title, Blue Ladies, and they are painted on the wall of the throne room of the Knossos palace. Some of them probably have seen that if you attended my sessions, my open art sessions, because I love to bring them to the attention of my artists. I have to tell you then, when I first saw this piece, which was a number of years ago, so I want to show you the piece which has an official title, Blue Ladies. It is exactly as it is put in all art books, Blue Ladies. The piece is painted on the wall of the throne room of the Knossos palace. Some of them probably have seen that at my sessions, because reproduction of this piece I like to bring to the attention of my artists. And another story, not criminal, not special, just it's about me. When I first saw this piece, Blue Ladies, I said to myself that all artists in the world should quit their art making, because nothing can be more beautiful than this piece. But I didn't quit. Many of my fellow artists didn't quit. So we go on painting. And we, you and I, are spreading again our magical wings. Where are them? They're here. And flying a little bit closer to our time. Now we are going to visit at the time like 2.5 millennia ago. Not 3.5, but 2.5, closer to our time, the time of our life. And this, what you see, is the view of Parthenon, the part, very famous, iconic piece in the history of art of humankind, of Western civilization, any civilization. The interesting thing about this image that you are looking at, this is another example, and I love it very much. This is another example of how art of another artist presents the art of his fellow artist, created 2.5 millennia ago. The art of American artist Frederick Edwin Church, his painting, presents the architectural masterpiece by a Pericle created, again, 2.5 millennia ago. And this is the bridge that art makes when we open our eyes and hearts and look around and see and look at everything that we can find when we travel through our life and everyday things. And on the side of that piece, by the way, a very beautiful sculpture that comes from similar times. The old Greek part of the figure, marble figure, you cannot see the paintings on it, but in old times they would paint the whole piece in many colors. And the interesting thing about that particular beautiful boy with a beautiful smile is that in art history books he's called blonde. Probably he was blonde, and he's very beautiful. Now let's go and see what else we can find there. You see those water and wine jars that Greeks were using in their everyday life. And now these things, these vases, the jars, the amphoras, are kept in the museum. I found that these particular pieces are part of the collection of Metropolitan Museum of Art. So just look around, and I'm sure that you will find in your own room pieces of furniture, pieces of dinnerware, pieces of whatever you can imagine, as beautiful as real pieces of art. And now, when we understand that art and beauty is everywhere, and Her Majesty of Beauty is making our art, is making our life so much more enjoyable, we can move forward and make another leap to another time. Also contributed very significantly to the development of our art and culture, of our thinking, of our perception of the world today. You already see on the side of that slide part of the lithograph presenting the Egyptian temple of Philae. And now we are traveling back in time again. It is three plus millennia back. That image, by the way, is not photograph, it is lithograph created by an artist and archaeologist, Robert Williams, if I am not mistaken, but I may be mistaken. Also, what you can see on the other screen, part of the ceiling of the palace of Amenhotep III, also the drawing of one of archaeologist artists, and the drawing created from the painted relief, also Egyptian. The drawing is created by another archaeologist, adventurer, and as we can see, artist. And on the right of the screen, you can see one of the most recognizable faces presenting woman beauty. It is the face of Nefertiti, the pharaoh wife from Al-Amarna, Egypt, which was called also City of Sun. I cannot imagine that anyone in the world of Western culture cannot recognize that beautiful face and will not admire it. And the only image, the only beauty that may be more recognizable than Nefertiti is, of course, Mona Lisa. So Mona Lisa. Her smile is famous, her beauty is famous. So many stories, so many relationships, she has created during her many centuries of life as a piece of art. Though when she was painted, she was just a young girl, like 17, 18. There are many ideas of who she was. Maybe wife of the merchant, Mona Lisa Gioconda, her name. Maybe Queen Isabella of the then ruling King of France, or maybe somebody else. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Leonardo da Vinci, when he started painting that portrait, which is not very big, it's a relatively small painting, he invested in this painting not only his outstanding talent as a painter, with many special effects that he started here, and a lot of followers after him, centuries and centuries and centuries after, were nourished by the experiencing just his technique, copying, researching, trying to implement what great Leonardo has invented, not only as a craftsman, because it is well known that every artist, not only an artist, a poet in his kind, but also a craftsman, because artists have to know the craft, the handling, the technique, the materials, the chemistry. Just stepping back from Mona Lisa for a second, the famous fresco painted by Leonardo last dinner, the last Passover dinner was known as suffering from the wrong technique in mixing colors that Leonardo, as a very talented engineer and technologist and researcher, always tried to use in his paintings. So, make it shorter, the painting was very dark, and it has lost the colors of his original creation. And just recently I learned that after many years of painstaking restoration, remember it is fresco, so every brush stroke should be carefully treated, otherwise it will just peel off. So, after many years of restoration, the fresco was opened for public, and people were surprised how bright and colorful this fresco was, because for many centuries we used to see the darker colors suffering from the wrong mix of ingredients. I just hope that Leonardo, from these havens where his spirit now finds itself, will forgive me for that story that shows not only his achievements, multiple achievements, but also his little mistakes. Now let's get back to Mona Lisa. So, Leonardo was working on this little portrait from the beginning of this creation until the very end of his life, until the very end, until the last moments of his life, actually working life. And the story says, believe it or not, the story says that when Leonardo was blessed by the admiration of the young French King of France, Francis II, I believe, who invited him to France, who offered him some place to live, some chalet, and provided a pension, so Leonardo wouldn't need to work for money and could just do whatever he wanted to do. And he could think about things he wanted to think and paint whatever he wanted to paint. All these times, of course, Leonardo kept working on Mona Lisa and didn't want to part with her. Now we can call her, not it. So she was always, the portrait was always in the place, in the room when he was at that moment painting, just looking at her. And the young king, being an admirer of great Leonardo, would visit him from time to time to see how he's doing. He was not well at these years of his life, arthritis. You know what is it? Arthritis and something else. So once the king, while looking at Mona Lisa, just felt that he wanted to have it in his possession. He wanted to buy it. And he offered to old artist enormous sum of money. I do not remember what exactly that money was. And Leonardo said no. Imagine. To the king of France, who was so generous to him, who gave him shelter, actually, yes, shelter, and peace of mind and everything, he said no. After the sleepless night, Leonardo ran to have an appointment with the king and said to him, apologizing, of course, that of course, no money is involved. After he dies, after Leonardo dies, the portrait will go to the king. But until his death, he couldn't part with Mona Lisa. Then the story says, the king said to him, accepting his apology, of course, because of course he understood what was happening in the soul of this great master. And he said that he would pay this money anyway. So he paid the money. The portrait stayed with Leonardo until the last day of his life. And then now it lives in Louvre, which is King's Palace. That's the end of the story about Mona Lisa. At the very end of that presentation, I want to make one more note. I want to compare something with something. I want to tell you that when violin principal tunes up his orchestra, so the orchestra is ready to dive into the performance, into the ocean of music, into its craft. The art tunes all of us up to the condition that we can perceive the beauty and the artistry and the visual happiness around us. Wherever we go, wherever we turn our head and look at, including the mirror, we look at ourselves and suddenly understand how beautiful we are. Thank you.